That was like a funeral dirge of a
It was.
countdown.
The music was
That
like, and
that was sickly sounding. I don't
and I
know.
mean usually it starts off upbeat and then it slows down at some point, but that was like dragging from the beginning.
Somebody needs to feed that hamster that's running that little wheel. So,
Yeah, the drummer on that track was on LSD or something. I don't know.
yeah, I'd say so. All right. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. It's just Sean and I for right now. Bob will be joining us shortly. He had a prior engagement, I think, with ESPN Radio. So it's good to know we're second rate. That's
Yeah,
fine. Not
yeah.
that there's anything wrong with that. That's we can do that. We can do that. But we're not all Sports Illustrated writers like Mr. Bob is. So
Yeah,
who's in such demand. Some of us have to work for a living. Anyway,
yeah, that ain't no shit.
yeah. So I think it was a Falcons fan. No, because they only know how to pump fake crowd noise.
Yeah.
What's up, What's up, Calvin? All right.
Oh,
So we've had a little news this week.
been a busy week.
Yeah, well, it's like every Tuesday. Monday, something big happens. And then Wednesday, something big happened last week. Malcolm Jenkins, we talked about that, whether or
Yeah.
not he was going to stay, because the way he restructured his deal was very reminiscent of Drew Brees, reconstructing his deal. So Malcolm announced his retirement and thus ended the last link to the 2009 Super Bowl team. Of course, look who's here. There he is. We were just talking bad about you. I mean, we were just talking about you. So, it was all good.
I'm not that bright. You could talk about me behind my back straight to my face, and I
There we
probably have
go.
a conversation.
There we go.
No, we were just talking about how at least we got second place between Under the Dome and Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. It was ESPN you were on tonight. Was that where were you right before this?
No, it was our mutual friends over at Cat Chronicles, the CP3 podcast.
Okay.
Our brothers from North Carolina said hello to you guys and all the Who Dat Nation. Tony might have waved with the middle finger, but I mean, he does it.
Well, he waved one finger at a time, right?
They're going to blow their draft anyway, so let's see how many more quarterbacks they can draft or bring in, and screw up. The interesting thing, and I don't want to go too far off the rails talking about because I love Tony and Cat Chronicles, but I'm curious to see how hot is that seat for Rule this year.
It's blazing.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised he survived this past year, and I think it's because they want him to succeed, but he has just made such horrible decisions on the quarterback, and I don't think I mean Watson spurning them really just made it even worse. And they invested so much in the draft picks, and he has a very Mike Ditka. It's a hell of a comparison, but he has a very Mike Ditka like career going on now. Because I think he went 6-10 2 years ago, and 5-11 this past year. So Ditka went 6-10, 6-10, then 3-13 before he got fired. So if it wasn't for the Falcons being the train wreck that they are, Carolina has a very good chance if they screw up this draft to follow that same suit to do a 3-13 kind of season.
So I agree.
It's a shame. Well, it's not a shame because they're in our division, but they have so much talent on the defensive side, young talent.
Mm-hmm.
DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, are you've got to put them near the top of their respective positions in the NFL. But that offensive line continues to get quarterbacks. It took probably 2 decades off of Cam Newton's life, and You think your answer to the quarterback position is giving up multiple first-round picks for Sam Darnold? That seat for Matt Rule is blazing hot, and that all the more reason why I think the Panthers are going to be drafting a quarterback this year. And Rule's job probably depends on a rapid development of said quarterback.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I think it's a battle between the Falcons and the Panthers to see who's going to go after Willis first, because I think those two franchises look in him more than anyone else, because for Carolina it's Cam Newton part 2, and for Atlanta it's Michael Vick part 2. And that seems to be their big that's like their big draw, I guess, to that player. They want to see if they can get a Cam Newton, Michael Vick kind of player to transform their franchise and energize their franchise. And in Carolina's case, they've run Christian McCaffrey into the ground too.
Yep.
One of our big fears about Alvin Kamara is him getting too many touches, because I don't think he is built to be a 300 plus carry back every season. No. I think he works best in a running back by committee. So,
and that's actually been one of my problems with Sean Payton, the last year and a half, 2 years, is that you give Kamara 300 to 320 touches. I got no problem with that, but I agree. He's not built. Yeah. It takes away from what he does best when the bulk of those 300, if it's 300 carries, over right guard or left guard, because he's the kind of weapon, and we three of us have discussed it many times. He's the kind of weapon you need to get in space, which is, and obviously we'll discuss potential draft picks as we get closer to the draft. But that's also why I think the Saints aren't done either at running back, either in free agency or with a day, possibly as high as a day 2 draft pick or early day 3, to try to take some of that rushing load off of Kamara. It's not going to reduce his snaps per se, but take his rushing load off of him.
Absolutely, and I think that's part of the reason why they're moving Taysom Hill to quote unquote tight end. I still think he will be that guy who runs the short yardage offense as a quarterback. He does do some jet sweep kind of plays. He does all the things we've been seeing him do. Yeah. It's just they're taking the every down quarterback out of him, because, and this is the thing, this is the problem why I do not want Willis on this team. There's several reasons why I don't want him on the team, but this is probably the biggest one. You need to, for a quarterback to run the ball as much as they do, they need a lot more bulk padding. They need to be able to take some hits. I think that was the problem they had with Cam Newton. He was a big quarterback, so they let him run around out there and take a lot of hits. Michael Vick, he was much more elusive. He knew when to get out of bounds too. He wasn't about to let somebody take his head off. And I think, you get quarterbacks that are quick, but kind of wiry or spindly. And that's how I kind of look at Willis. He's not quite as thick as some of these other quarterbacks in the past. I think, he will end up getting hurt. So, for Taysom Hill to play a tight end kind of position, or more of an H back or an F back kind of position, he's going to have to bulk up. He's going to have to put more padding on to take some extra hits. So we kind of went sideways, right? Because when you came on, but we were just talking about how all the Saints news that's happened, including what we talked about last week, Malcolm Jenkins announcing his retirement. And I was just saying that he was the last link to the 2009 Super Bowl team, and he was a rookie that year. I'll ask both of y'all.
He will always have a special place in my heart, because when I was going through my illness, and I was going through chemo and radiation treatments and all that. Malcolm Jenkins, Jabari Greer, Kyrie Robinson. There were like 4 or 5 of those guys that I was very active on Twitter at the time, and through Twitter, they always managed to check up on me and see how I was doing. And you follow these players through their college careers and into their professional careers, and they play for your team, and that's always kind of the point where you like, yeah, I love this guy. But when they go above and beyond, and they make it on a personal level, that's awesome.
Well, Sean already jumped the gun on me, and that's a good story, Sean.
John's the son.
Yeah. Bob, your take on Malcolm Jenkins and his tenure with the Saints? Good, bad, indifferent? What is your take on him?
Malcolm Jenkins will and should always have a place in Saints fans' hearts because he was a key contributor to that Super Bowl championship team. And Malcolm, as Sean pointed out personally, with personal experience, Malcolm has always been extremely active in the community. He seems like, I've never had the honor to talk to him or interact with him, but he seems like a genuinely good person. As far as on the field, it was time. Malcolm Jenkins had become an absolute liability in coverage over the last couple of years, and coverage was never his strong suit to begin with. He was still a great team leader, but really Malcolm had ceased to be effective unless he was in the tackle box as an extra linebacker or a blitzer. He could still hit you with a ton of bricks. I mean, ask any opponent. But it was time. I mean, even if he didn't announce his retirement, I had written a couple of times that he was going to be a potential cap casualty, that the Saints should look to replace his spot, either in free agency or the draft. Malcolm, the player, gave us some great memories. I mean, his tenure with the Saints and in the NFL in general, he's an absolute Iron Man, which is rare these days. Not a Hall of Famer, but a good to almost very good type of player in his prime.
It's funny too, because he became a better player when he went to Philadelphia than he ever was with the Saints.
Yes. And he brought that back to New Orleans.
Yep. Well, he brought back the leadership. He grew as a player too. I think he was a lot more immature as a Saint, and became a better player with Philadelphia. And then we got the more improved Malcolm Jenkins when he came back.
I think that I heard somewhere on like ESPN or something that there's no player that played more snaps over the past like 5 seasons, I think, than Malcolm Jenkins.
Yeah.
He missed I think 2 plays in 5 seasons.
Very, very durable player, and he really helped get that secondary organized. When he came onto that team, a lot of the mental mistakes went away. Yep. I know people, and I was one of them, I thought Von Bell was a better player, but in reality, Malcolm Jenkins was better than Von Bell. Von Bell had the advantage of youth, and he could grow more with the Saints, but at the point they needed Malcolm Jenkins. That's why this defense gotten to be a lot better. So that brings us to, before we talk about the draft in the big trade, that brings us to the news that happened today. Interesting. I did not know that. Tyrann Mathieu was at the Saints facility. He did a tour. He met with Coach Dennis Allen. He met with Mickey Loomis. Didn't leave with a contract, but I think there was a conversation. Bob, I'll ask you first, and I'll ask you, Sean. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen with?
Well, to be honest, I go ahead, Bob.
No. Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
To be honest, I believe that, as you and I were discussing off air, Alan, the Saints met with him and kind of laid out, this is what we can give you. If you're interested, there's a spot for you on this roster. If you're not, if you want to go for the money, you're going to have to go somewhere else. So to me, at least in theory, I think the ball is completely in Tyrann's court right now.
Okay, Bob. Is that pretty much what you were going to say, or?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu, for what he can still do on a football field, he would be a big asset to this defense. I remember the three of us talking about the possibility of Mathieu coming in if they were going to lose at Marcus Williams, which they ultimately did. And we all agreed, to my recollection, we all agreed that Mathieu wouldn't have fit in as a traditional free safety like Williams played, but they have Marcus May now for that. So now Mathieu, if he comes to the Saints, he can play the role that they used Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in. Now you have two pieces that you can use in the tackle box, use in the slot, play as a two deep safety. Or just have them roam around the field, and that's a legitimate weapon for a defense. But a lot depends on what Mathieu's contract demands are. If he comes to the Saints, folks, it will probably be on a 1-year deal worth, and I'm just spitballing here, worth about $10 million. And if he plays well, he'll hit the open market again and look for the big bucks. If Mathieu is looking for a 3 or 4 year deal that's averaging 15-ish million, it's not going to be with the New Orleans Saints. And secondly, and I'm going to piss off you LSU fans again, the reality is
that's what we do here.
Right. The reality is that yes, Tyrann Mathieu is a good player and a very versatile player. But Saints fans would not be begging for him if he didn't have the initials LSU in his collegiate career. That's the way it is. I don't. This team does not need Tyrann Mathieu. This defense does not need Tyrann Mathieu to be successful. And I would laugh because signing Mathieu would mean that the Saints have, if you count re-signing of P.J. Williams, the Saints have signed 5 safeties this offseason, which to me just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Well, also with the retirement of Malcolm Jenkins, you would have that experience factor in Mathieu.
You would.
Yeah.
He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1, and I mean that's big in locker room.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think he can provide a level of leadership. That's a plus. But the big thing for me is you have to figure out where a guy like him would fit in your defense. You can't just sit there and say, okay, we're going to plug him in at free safety. He'll do the single high safety thing. Right. That's not where he belongs. And because then all he's doing is watching plays. And you can't just plug him in Malcolm Jenkins' role. Okay, you give me the strong safety. You're going to go and bang against tight ends, and you can go in there and stuff the run like Malcolm Jenkins did. That doesn't fit him either. Mm-hmm. Ironically, May fits in both those roles.
Right.
So
this is blasphemous to LSU fans. May's the better player at this point in their career.
Coming off of a torn Achilles tendon and a possible suspension for DUI, so you've got those two things going against him. Okay, I'm gonna bring this one up too, but I like the idea of signing him only because I'm curious to see the rotation back there. We've loaded up on defensive linemen too, so that gives you an option with a lot of rotation. But Mathieu would have to realize, or Honey Badger would have to realize that he is a part-time player, declining player right now, and he can't demand a lot of money from us.
True.
Okay, so yesterday was Taco Tuesday, even though today is Tuesday. I can remember in the draft how many people wanted this guy, Taco Charlton.
Yeah.
And he's now on his third team, I believe. Third or fourth, yeah. He's bounced around.
I think we're the fourth.
Okay. Calvin with his normal optimism. You know, yeah, I know he should have been signed today. I think this is again one of those kind of signings that here we go. Look at this joke. If we get safety smoke Monday and Sauce Gardner, do we smoke taco sauce? I bet you spent all day coming up with that joke, son. That took all day to come up with that.
Matt, if you weren't family, you might get banned.
Yeah.
We gotta get Matt back on the show, man.
Yeah, we do. Avery comes in, even though LSU fan, I don't want him. And the problem you have with him is, I think the fans will look at him as he just stepped off the field from LSU, and they're going to forget that he's been in the league since 2014 or 20. Was it 2014 or 2013? Just 2013.
2013 is when he was drafted.
Yeah, right. He's been in the league since 2013. So they're going to think he just came off the field in Baton Rouge and forget he's had all these years and that he has lost a step. So, it's the same with Jarvis Landry. It's the same with OBJ. You're looking at these guys as they were productive players in the pros, productive players from LSU, not realizing that they have a little age, a little wear on them, even though they're young chronologically. As Indiana Jones said once, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah.
And
that's why I'm 80 years old.
I think you lowballed it there, Bob.
I was playing my Toby Keith classic the other day. I ain't as good as I once was. I was as good once as I ever was. I just don't. My mind tells me, you can still do it. My body says, oh no, you can't.
That's the way I am when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
To go to the bathroom, it's like, can I make it? Probably not.
I haven't gotten that problem yet, thank God. So I think what you're seeing the Saints doing right now is you're seeing them sign a lot of bargain players. They signed Justin Evans, the safety. He was a second-round pick, I think, in 2017.
Yep.
He had some injuries. One of them, I think, was a knee injury. He had a bunch of injuries. Took a year off of football to recover from it. And to me, this is a Delvin Breaux kind of signing. You're bringing a guy in. Let's see if he makes it. This is one of the safeties you were talking about. Let's see if he makes it through camp. And if he makes it, fine. If he doesn't make it, no harm, no foul. Yeah, you didn't.
Right.
You didn't. Bob, what do you know about Evans?
I liked him. Coming out of Texas A&M, he was a real thumper at safety, but the man could run then. Which meant that he had a lot of range. And he played, pretty much 2 full seasons with the Buccaneers in 2017 and 2018. And he was really developing into a solid safety. Before he had a couple toe injuries and a knee injury, and then he blew out his Achilles, and the Achilles is the major one. He's been essentially out of football for over 2 years.
I saw that he hasn't played since 2018. I think is what they said.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to see what kind of mobility and range he still has. But look, for people that are criticizing the signing, folks, this is a former second-round pick. He's only 27 years old, and it comes at absolutely zero risk for the Saints. If Evans bounces back to health, that even close, very close to the player he was prior to the injury, then the Saints have an absolute steal. If he doesn't, then it's another camp body at a very deep position on the depth chart. Like I said, there's zero risk in this whatsoever.
Yeah, Calvin's making sure we never get Delvin Breaux on this show with that kind of comment. Woo!
I don't think that was going to happen anyway. Well, I did the legwork on that project.
Yeah, you got to write him a check. So, and Blake Bortles, of course, announces, asked for his release and was granted it. That was a given. I wasn't surprised. The Saints bring 4 quarterbacks into camp anyway, every year. And Blake Bortles is doing the nose counting. He knows he's not going to beat out Andy Dalton. He's definitely not a starter, so he's looking for some place where he can compete to be the number 2 guy. So that
good luck with that.
Yeah, so that brings us to the big news on Monday. The big news on Monday was the huge trade, and it's an unusual trade because I've never seen this soon or this early before the draft. A trade of this magnitude. This is the kind of trade that goes down like draft day, or goes down the day before the draft, something like this. This was announced yesterday. A deal was put in place yesterday. So basically, the Saints now have 2 number 1 picks, but it costs them their first round next year, the second round in 2 years, and their third round this year.
We had 2/3 this year, did we not?
Yes, we had 2/3. Yes, we had already traded one of those. We had 3. We had traded one of them earlier last season for Bradley Roby. So these were the compensatory picks we were able to trade. We traded one of our compensatory picks. What do you think the Saints are going to do with these picks? Bob, I'll ask you first.
Let me start with what I hope they don't do. I hope they did not make this move to package number 16 and 19, to package those 2 to move up to get a quarterback. Because that essentially would mean that the Saints have given up 2 firsts, a second, and a third round to get a quarterback in the top 10. And a player who, at least in my view, regardless of who it is, a player that should be drafted nowhere near the top 10 if he did not play the position of quarterback. That's what I hope they don't do. What I have a hunch, and me and Kyle Mosley and John Hendricks, the Saints News Network team, I'm not going to say arguing, that's too strong a term, but there's been some strong discussions behind closed doors. About what we think, the intention is, and about some of the things that we're hearing. I believe that the Saints do have an eye on a quarterback, and I actually, because of this move, I now expect them to come out of the draft with a quarterback. But I believe that they have their eye on a couple players at 16 and 19. That's why they wanted 2 first-round picks. I actually believe that they're going to draft a wide receiver this time, so hallelujah. And with the other pick.
You just jinxed it. You realize that, right?
What's that?
I said you just jinxed it. You realize that, right?
The fact that the entire fan base has been screaming for a wide receiver all off season makes me worried that the Saints won't draft one out of spite. But I do seriously. But I do believe that they have their eye on a couple of wide receivers. And they really like 1 or 2 quarterbacks, and they are heavily in talks with a couple offensive tackles. So my feeling is that they will actually draft a wide receiver, and depending on how the board plays out, that's where you get either your quarterback, or if they're the guys they like are gone, then they're going to go offensive tackle.
I completely agree with that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Sean. How do you see this playing out?
I honestly believe that they have got to get a wide receiver. You cannot face another season with the wide receiver core looking the way that it has looked in the past couple of seasons. So that's your first slot. I I think that they probably have their eye on one, possibly two quarterbacks that are coming out, and Malik Willis will not get past Atlanta. I just don't believe that that'll happen.
No.
And
No,
the trading of Matt,
the package picks to go get.
yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. Just like you said, for many reasons. I've made no hesitation. I've had no hesitation in saying that of the whole quarterback class in this draft, I wouldn't put any of them, even the best of them, which all things considered, I think probably Malik Willis is the best of the class. I wouldn't rate him any higher than a second round pick.
I'm really jaded.
You took a quarterback in the draft last year.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you invest, we've said this many, many times on this show, if you invest a first round draft pick in a player, regardless of position, you're looking at that player to be an every down contributor at most within the first 2 seasons of his career. And I don't see that out of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. Now, I very easily could be wrong.
Sure.
But I just don't see it. Any quarterback that you take is going to be a project, and a project comes much more affordably in the 3rd or 7th round. But, you know, by the same token, if you are desperate for a quarterback, you're going to have to take it in the 1st to 2nd round, depending on how the board falls. I'm like Bob said. I hope they don't do that. They don't package these to try to move up and roll the dice. I don't want to see that happen.
My Ian Book hasn't taken a solid. Oh, okay. It took me a minute to catch on to this. I'm sorry. In the draft, my thing with Willis, and I'm really jaded because I watched the UL Liberty game from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that. I'm watching Willis out there, and yeah, is the talent around him inferior? Yeah, it was. But you watch that game, the UL quarterback Levi looked more polished and ready to be a pro quarterback than Willis did in that game. And I challenge anybody to watch that film and look at it, and you tell me differently.
To me, it's a warning sign that you had a player that was playing at Auburn and transferred down to a lower.
That is a huge
team.
flag. I don't care if you made freeze or not.
Made a draft run based on playing. God forgive me, but I mean it's ULL. So playing against inferior talent.
Yeah, it could have been worse when playing against La Tech. So or ULM, even worse.
Hey, ULM had a fantastic. They've got a new coach. Did you know that?
That's because we retired the old one. One team won 12 games this year, and it ain't the one in Monroe. I'm just letting you know that. So anyway, 13 you got the bowl game.
Bobby Bowden's son is our coach now.
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah, he was a Tulane coach too.
Yeah. He's done all jokes aside, he's done a fantastic job, and he's turned this program around. And I look for big things out of him.
Calvin's jumped to your defense here. Okay.
There you go, Calvin.
Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I hear you, Calvin.
Go Dogs.
You lucky in Falcons country out there. Anyway, so but my point is with Willis is, and you touched on, he transferred from Auburn to Liberty because ostensibly he wanted to follow Hugh Freeze out there. because Hugh Freeze is designing an offense that fit him. And he felt like he wasn't going to fit in with the new offense in Auburn. But, to me, when you look at, and we go back to Marcus Davenport, when Marcus Davenport's playing for Texas San Antonio, he looked like a big fish in a small pond. He's destroying these poor kids. Okay. I watch Willis at Liberty, and I'm going, yeah, he's faster. He can take off and run. He's faster than a lot of those guys out there. But I'm not seeing a quarterback putting the ball in places at the college level that crappy receivers are dropping his passes. I'm seeing balls being rocketed to people that are like 6 feet over their head, way away from the sideline, like just scattershot, and to me, if you're not an accurate quarterback, you're an inconsistent thrower. I don't care how much the game has changed now to I guess accommodate a more of a spread offense with a more mobile quarterback. You still have to be an accurate passer.
Yep.
You still have to be able to get the ball to people. When you cannot get the ball to people, eventually defenses figure out that you can't do that, and they start sending guys in to punish you, to dare you to throw the football, because they don't respect the pass. And that's my concern with Willis is
that doesn't translate well to the next level.
Well, you don't have Sean Payton anymore to develop a guy into a more consistent passer. And I don't even know if Sean can – I don't know how much Sean can do or was able to do develop quarterbacks because, okay, so we're going to take Drew Brees out of the equation because Drew Brees is Drew Brees, and he did a lot of that on his own. But, when you start looking at guys like Tony Romo is his on his plus side, on his ledger. Okay. But then you start looking at the other guys that we've had in the past, quarterbacks, how much they developed. And I'm talking about you can
Sean
go back
Canfield, to Kerry Collins.
Yes. But Kerry Collins had to put the alcohol down. That was his big problem. I mean, it really was. Yeah. He had a hitch in his throw, and I remember that from his draft thing, and I saw it a lot.
It was called his delivery.
Yeah, he would kick out his elbow a little bit when he would throw the football. Mm-hmm. He had an elongated throw, and I know guys like Phillip Rivers have proven to be, they can have an awkward-looking throwing motion. I mean, hell, Bernie Kosar. He used to take the snap from the side because he couldn't drop back. He couldn't do a clean drop back. So, I mean, I get that.
There was no more trouble in sight than to see Bernie Kosar scrambling because you thought he was going to hurt himself more than the defense ever could.
Yes. But, I don't see a guy on the Saints staff, and I certainly don't see a guy on the Falcons staff or Carolina staff who's going to be able to develop this guy into being a Pro Bowl level quarterback. And that's what you expect. If you draft somebody in the first round, you expect them to be a Pro Bowl talent.
Yep, absolutely.
Within the first 3 years, they've got to be a Pro Bowler, at least. If you draft them number one overall, they got to be all pro, taking you to the playoffs. Otherwise, they're a bust.
Yeah.
I don't care how many yards they throw for. I don't care any of that stuff. You have to be the kind of guy that elevates a team to a perennial playoff team if you're number one overall. That's why I consider Jeff George a bust because, he's got all the yardage, but who do you elevate? All he did was piss people off, So
I completely agree with that.
Well, and when I criticize these quarterbacks in this year's class, that's what I mean. I mean, there's some talent. I really like Matt Corral. I like Carson Strong. There are some qualities in Willis's and Desmond Ritter's game that I like. Mm-hmm. Each of the quarterbacks, throw in Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett in there too. There are some qualities in each guy that I like. I just don't see any as a franchise guy that's able to make you into a perennial playoff team. Like Sean said, I could be wrong, absolutely. And if the Saints draft any of these guys, I sure as hell hope I'm wrong. Just based off what I've seen, from film study, which is part of my job, and from what feels like 23 years of watching Kenny Pickett, that's just my feeling on these quarterbacks.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying when I say that I don't see any of them as first round talent. There, as Bob said, I probably should have said it the way that Bob said it. There are aspects of their game that is solid and good, or otherwise they wouldn't be considered as top tier players. But as an every down first day starter in the NFL, I don't see that in any of them.
Well, I think they're all projects, and it's dangerous to draft a project quarterback in the first round. But if you look,
it's expensive.
Well, yeah, it is. It can be. It can be for your franchise.
That's what I'm saying. You invest a first round pick. You're wanting this player on the field, contributing to your success. If not day one, then as soon as possible.
So my take with this is, and I know Calvin doesn't like him, but I think Matt Corral has the least amount of weaknesses of a project quarterback. Okay,
I can see that.
What I mean by that is he's got a great compact delivery. That ball flies out of his hands. He's very good and very accurate in the short and intermediate throws. The problem I have with Matt Corral is he played in that RPO, very simple read offense. He throws most of his passes over the middle of the field in that offense. So how well can you see the entire field? Secondly, he's gotten a little bit thicker, but he's still skinny as a rail. And he's somebody who likes to run, and that's what we started the show when we're talking about. He's going to get the crap beat out of him. He tries to run around the pro level. Those guys just as fast as he is, and they're going to hit him hard.
See, that's what I think most people don't realize about the transition from the collegiate level to the pro level. On the collegiate level, you're going to play against a team, even like if you're playing Michigan, Notre Dame, LSU, you're playing against a team that has maybe 3 or 4 possible pro players on it, maybe at best.
Yeah. Well,
when you play in the NFL, you're playing the best in the world at every position on the field.
Let's just look at Alabama versus LSU. Okay, the Alabama LSU game, traditionally, not only are there going to be a dozen to 15 players drafted on between those two squads, but at least 8 of them are going to be first round picks.
Yeah.
Okay, between the two teams I'm talking about. Okay, and this is when they were both at their peak. Okay, so those are two of the best programs in college football, and we just said 8 first rounders. Mm-hmm. You go play on a typical Sunday. How many first rounders are on that field? Hell,
exactly.
The Saints at one point had 8 first rounders in their defense, and the defense was one of the worst in the league. I mean, that's the difference in there. So, So
people expect it. A team drafts the player in the first round, and the fan base expects them to come in and be all pro. They were that great in college. It's not the same. And more, probably 3 times as much at the quarterback position.
And I think that we're sitting here dinging these quarterbacks, but I think that's why we don't consider it to be a good class, because you look at just last year's class. Okay, last year's class. What were you going to ding? The kid from Clemson who went to Jacksonville.
Shaggy.
Shaggy. Yeah, thank you. That's
every time I see him, I think, where's Scooby?
I'm thinking. I was just.
He is the ugliest woman I've ever seen.
But regardless, he had no weaknesses. Okay, if you look at
Trevor Lawrence, by the way,
I know thank you. You look at Trevor Lawrence. He had never lost a college game. He had a national championship under his belt. He really looked like he was going to be the perfect quarterback. Peyton Manning when he came out. Even Ryan Leaf to an extent. Ryan Leaf they thought had a cannon for an arm. This is always my warning. This is my warning all the time when people tell me, he had a cannon for an arm. Freaking Jamarcus Russell threw a pass on his knees, 70-something yards.
Right.
Having a cannon for an arm doesn't make you a great quarterback. It never has.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, you get the Joe Namaths and the John Elways and the guys who can, put the cross on you from the football, from the nose of the football, putting a dent in your body. But that's not what makes a great quarterback. Tom Brady does not have a cannon for an arm. Drew Brees never had a cannon for an arm. What made those guys great was this unbelievable accuracy and the consistency from snap to setup to release, and they knew what you were going to do before even you know what you were going to do. Peyton Manning the same way. He knew your defense better than your defensive coordinator. He knew every weakness of your defense by just checking, and that's that. And
the position was never as cerebral as it was post Peyton Manning entering the league.
Right, and
because he put that much work into it.
Well, and that's what that was the thing that feared everybody, because they would look at the pictures and I remember when Richard Sherman was talking about the great quarterbacks, and he said Drew Brees, for example, would sit there and he's going to study your defenses during the game. And you may fool him for a while, but eventually he's going to figure out what you're doing. He'll find the weakness and attack it mercilessly until you figure out how to stop it.
Yep.
And that is the part of quarterback evaluation that is the hardest to figure out. No scout has been able to figure that out yet. So
also, you're talking about these guys that have played football basically year-round from the time that they were in 4th grade, 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time they're 21, 22 years old coming out of college, there's no way to accurately gauge whether they even want to do it anymore. It's one thing to do it because it affords you the opportunity to do something else, like get an education and pay for your education. But these Mandarich, wasn't the
Tony Mandarich, yeah.
He didn't want to play football anymore, but they were throwing piles of money at him. So what are you going to do? Of course, I'm going to sign the contract.
I remember that Sports Illustrated cover, and Jamie Duke said when he's.
By the way, go on. Sorry.
What year did you say it was?
1975. Larry Burton was one of the picks. There was an offensive lineman with the second one.
Kurt Schumacher.
Yeah, that's
I knew. Yeah.
I'm reading an article. I just looked it up this afternoon. The Saints have had. Hold on. Yeah, because I'm writing an article on it tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the 7th time in franchise history that the Saints have had 2 first-round draft choices. 8 if you count 1981 and George Rogers and Dave Wilson as the supplemental.
Yeah. Kurt Schumacher was the guard they had drafted too. But Larry Burton had all world speed and all neighborhood hands. He did. He caught 2 touchdowns his entire career with the Saints. He was terrible.
They were probably accidents.
He was. He was. One of them is actually I think it is in the first win the Saints ever had in the Superdome, which was against the Green Bay Packers in 1975. And I think he caught a long touchdown pass in that game. But yeah, Larry Burton. And the other reason why I know this, well, aside from the fact I have a Saints history book, but the only reason why I know this is because Larry Burton was the guy the Saints drafted because they didn't get Walter Payton. The Bears took Walter Payton, so the Saints took Larry Burton. But allegedly they were interested in Walter Payton. Can you imagine how poor of a career Walter Payton would have had with the 75 Saints?
Oh my God!
Let's
not tarnish his image, please.
The 75 Saints were so bad. How bad were they? They were so bad. They only scored over 21 points in one game, I think, in 14 games.
Jesus.
Is that the year Archie Manning missed with the shoulder injury?
That was 76, but he was beat up pretty good in 75. That was John North's last year. First year in the Dome. That's when fans found out that you can take your Pro magazine, rip out the pages, and they make great paper airplanes. And the biggest cheers were if the paper airplane made it close to the fans, made it close to the players on the field. I am dead serious. I was at those games because my dad, I guess, they couldn't call Child Protective Services on me. On my parents, but my dad would take me to these games because my mom wasn't going to sit and watch that shit. And the most frustrating thing was after the game was over, we get in the car and my dad would put on WWL radio. WWL celebrated their 100th anniversary last week. And we'd have to listen to Hap Glaudy's Hap's Point After. And I used to sit there and wonder, we just lived this nightmare. Why do you want to relive it? Listen to these fans call this radio station and complain about the game we just watched, So it was
the last few games that we went to New Orleans for. We'd spend the night before, and then go to the stadium game day. And when the game was over, we'd drive back home. And until we got out of range of WWL, we'd listen to the post game show with Bobby, and you could tell what kind of day it was for him by how can I put this? How bad his speech was beginning to slur, and how many expletives he dropped.
And it's funny. My son asked that question about the last time the Saints, or the first time the Saints had 2 number 1 picks. They did have 2 number 1 picks in '67, but they traded one of them away for Gary Quazzo. They traded the Baltimore Colts, and the Colts, of course, selected Bubba Smith, Hightower. For those of you who remember Police Academy. And the other player they drafted, it was just like how it was for Carolina and for Jacksonville. You had a draft pick, the first overall pick, and the last pick of that first round. So they traded away that first one for Gary Quazzo. And then they traded away. I mean, they drafted a guy with the last pick, and that guy was Les Kelly, who it's hard to remember. Did he come I think he was a linebacker at Alabama, and they turned him to a fullback, or maybe it was reversed. He came as a fullback, and they turned him into a linebacker, one or the other. Either way, the man never made a start and was gone by the 1969 season. So it just tells you how bad this was. I mean, even the Falcons, they got their first guy right, Tommy Nobis. They got him right. Yeah, they got him right. So, that just should have told you.
He had a really an enduring career, did he not?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some people felt it was a borderline Hall of Fame career, so he was a good pick for them.
Anytime that you are the first pick of the draft and you spend your entire career with an organization, I think that's Hall of Fame worthy.
Yeah. So
because it means that you're a very good to great player. regardless of how your team performs.
So Jimmy Gumbo asked, I had it up a little bit ago. We started going on this other tangent here, but Jimmy Gumbo asked, so if we really don't like the quarterbacks, and I'm convinced they're going to take one, I just don't know who it's going to be yet. My son says it's going to be Ritter. I think it's going to be Corral or Pickett, whichever one slides to the higher pick.
We've only ever drafted one quarterback from Ole Miss, and that didn't turn out too terribly bad.
We only drafted one quarterback in the first round in the entire 55 years of this franchise's history. We have never drafted. Archie Manning is the only one. Archie Manning is the only player who ever wore number 8 for the Saints. So
and the only player that ever will wear number 8.
Yeah. So that alone tells you, how rare it's been that the Saints have drafted a quarterback. Dave Wilson, number 1 supplemental draft, doesn't count as a regular draft. It cost us the first round pick in 82. But in the regular draft, Archie Manning is the only one that we've ever drafted in the first round. He was drafted number 2. The quarterbacks were Jim Plunkett of Stanford, Archie Manning, Ole Miss, and Dan Pastorini from Santa Clara College. Don't ask me why I know this. I know this only because my dad loved to make fun of Dan Pastorini's name. He always called him Pastorini. And he would say it over and over. Every Oilers game we ever had on television, he had to say something. He had to say that joke. So that's how I know this. And ironically, Plunkett and Pastorini both ended their careers with the Raiders.
Yep.
Well, Pastorini went over to the Rams, but as far as a starter, they both ended with the Raiders. All we needed was Archie to go over there, and he would have had all 3 first-round picks from the 71 draft.
Right.
Other than that, the highest draft choice that we ever spent on a quarterback was third round. Who was that? Garrett Grayson. That was the highest we ever spent. And I could run through the names of some of these guys that we've drafted at quarterback, and they're scary.
Yeah.
It's a scary list. I mean, Doug Nutsmeyer was somebody we had drafted. Do you know who Doug Nutsmeyer is?
Yep. Played at Idaho. He is now a coach.
Yes, he was an offensive coordinator for Alabama for one of the national championship games.
Yeah, that's right.
He was a really good college quarterback, too.
Yeah.
He just didn't transition to this level.
No. And, they gave him one start, and it was horrible. And Mike Buck, there's another strong-arm quarterback. He was dumb as a post, but he was a strong-arm quarterback. He's most famous for the play in 91 where Steve Walsh went Atlanta on Sunday Night Football. Steve Walsh had to leave the field because he had an injured finger, and Buck comes in and throws one pass. It was like a 70-yard pass to Michael Haynes, I think it was. No, was it Michael? No, Michael Haynes wasn't on the team yet. That was to Quinn Early. I think it was Quinn Early in 1990. Quinn Early or Floyd Turner, one of those two, one of the speedsters for the Saints. But he threw a long pass. They show Buck, the chin strap he grabbed didn't even fit his face. It was like hanging down. He grabbed an offensive lineman's chin strap because he never wore his helmet. He always had the ball cap on, so they had him run out there real fast and grab a helmet and go throw this pass. And Walsh comes back in, and they score a touchdown. It was 91 Sunday night game against the Falcons. This is a real easy one. Who is the only Heisman QB the Saints ever drafted?
Oh shit!
Oh, I know this one.
Was he? I think I knew. It took me a second, right? But yeah, I know it.
Werfel.
Yep. Danny Werfel. Danny Werfel's the only.
And at one time, the Saints had 2 running backs that were Heisman Trophy candidates. I don't know if they.
They had two Heisman Trophy winners in the backfield.
Campbell and Rogers.
Campbell and Rogers, yeah.
But listen, let's because I apologize, guys. I'm on my last legs. I have to apologize for coughing tonight. but I do want to address the question that you
Yes,
started.
I'm
Jimmy
sorry.
Gumbel asked.
Yeah. Who would you want to draft then? If we've been spending this whole time knocking the quarterbacks, who would you want to draft in that
All right,
first round?
listen. As far as who I want to draft, I want it to be a wide receiver. Hell, I'd be happy with wide receiver, but I'd like it to be a wide receiver, and I'd love to see a Penning or a Cross drop to them. But what things, and I get into it, with Saint social media a lot about a lot of things lately, and I just published my first mock draft this afternoon,
which was a good one. I liked it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. But what we try to do, and Alan and Sean, I know you guys do the same thing. Yeah. When we do this, when us media members do this, we do. We're human, so we mix in who we like or would want to see. But the reality is, we're trying to justify what we think the team will do. And that's why I made the picks that I did. I think the team will draft a wide receiver and a quarterback, with the backup plan being offensive tackle if the couple of quarterbacks that they like don't happen to be there. So that's the thing.
That's the thing. The variables are, we pick first at 16, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any of those other 15 teams do something different than what you anticipate, that throws the whole thing off. It's kind of like doing March Madness brackets. You have that Cinderella team that wins the first game, your bracket's busted. Well, it's hard to gauge what every other team in front of you is going to do.
It is.
So after you get in my opinion, it's always seemed that after you get through, say, pick 10, it's whoever's there that you're interested in.
The challenge you had, and I did this last night. I ran through a simulation, about a half dozen simulations, maybe a dozen simulations, of possible draft scenarios based on, if I did this first, what happens.
Exactly.
And I did receiver first. And you guys would love the receivers I picked up. I picked up guys like Jameson Williams, and I picked up the kid from Ohio State. I got you get some great talent sitting there at 16.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I would go back and get tackle, but 9 times out of 10, I lost the tackle I was looking for. And I'm only going a couple spots. Okay.
Yep.
So then I did tackle first, and I still got most of the receivers I wanted. But in both those scenarios, when it came down to the second round and start looking at quarterbacks, I'm left with guys like Howell from North Carolina and Carson Strong, who in the second round I'm overdrafting him. He goes in the third.
Yep.
So you lose. Because even if, we were talking about guys that aren't first round talents that really, probably should go in the second round, they go in that second round. If they start sliding out that first round, all those teams that we were talking about that are quarterback needy, Seattle, Atlanta, Carolina, even if one of those two teams takes it, Pittsburgh, they grab them in the top of the second round.
Yep.
Okay. Or the bottom half of the first round. So if you want a quarterback, unfortunately, that means you're going to have to take them at 16 or 19.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason why they made this trade is because they want a tackle and they want to be able to get a shot at a quarterback. I do not believe, and I'll be pissed off just like everybody else, if they package these 2 picks to go move up to go get somebody, because none of these quarterbacks are worth a top 10 pick, but someone's going to take them in the top 10.
Yeah.
And
they always do.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you start getting the back half of round 1, top of round 2, that's where they're going to disappear. If they make it past you at 19, that's where they go. Calvin says, take a safety in the second round. it's hard because when I go through my scenario, um, I want to get my receiver. I also want to. We talked about running backs earlier. I want a running back too, and I want a tight end.
Yep.
So, you know, safety starts falling to day 3, and you start looking at the safeties left in day 3. If you don't take them in the 4th or 5th round, you got 2 6th. You're going to have to trade up to get back into the higher, because now you're starting to get some real project safeties. So that's the hard part there.
I think that Dennis Allen has made the moves that they made in free agency, because I think we'll see very little draft activity on the defensive side, except for maybe a linebacker, because if they don't re-sign Quan, that depth really concerns me. Yeah. I no longer think that they'll draft the safety. Not that Justin Evans or Daniel Sorensen is the answer, but they filled out that depth chart. They brought back P.J. Williams, and they may bring in Tyrann Mathieu. So I don't think they're going to draft a safety unless one falls to them on an early day 3. And I'm starting to feel the same way about defensive tackle too. Again, if they go by their draft board and just pick a particular round, it doesn't matter. If a top defensive tackle or a top safety is still available on their draft board in round X or Y, they'll take them then, because that's just what they do, and that's what you should do. That's the way you should draft. But I don't think that they're gunning for anything. I think this draft is going to be almost 100% offensive.
I think so too,
as it should be, in my opinion.
And I know we have Taysom Hill as a tight end, and you got Adam Troutman, and you brought in. I think they signed some guy from the Bears, probably basically Garrett Griffin part 2. Yeah. So I mean, you do need a pass catching tight end. So I really like the kid from Ohio State. And I think he is a 3rd round pick. I wouldn't mind getting him in the 3rd, and I want a running back too, because we haven't even talked about the elephant in the room. Alvin Kamara. What are we doing? That's interesting. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, because yes and no, it has and it hasn't. But I do want to talk about that. But anyway, we haven't talked about Alvin Kamara and a possible suspension, and Mark Ingram is not the guy who can carry this team. And Bob, we've talked about it in the past. You could bring in a Marlon Mack or a couple of players like that, but you really need somebody with fresh legs.
Yep.
And you've got a Brian Robinson. You've got the kid over at Michigan, who I would take a day 3 flyer on. I had his name a second ago.
I forget it too. I probably didn't write it down either, because I loathe Michigan. Anything Michigan. Yeah, the only Michigan prospect I have, obviously the 2 edge rushers, but Daxdale I really like at safety. But yeah, that's
Hassan Haskins.
Yes.
Hassan Haskins. Yeah. So
the last Haskins from the Big Ten didn't work out so well. So pass.
That's an interesting character. That's an interesting name too, Brees Hall from Iowa State. But yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think we've seen very good undrafted running backs recently. I mean, I think Kyrie Robbins is the last undrafted running back that really had an impact on this team. So, I think they're going to – I would be surprised they draft somebody that high in the 2nd round. I think 3rd and 4th round – I think 3rd and 4th are really good for them. But going back to Jimmy's question here, outside of Mark Ingram, when they traded back in the 2011 draft to get Mark Ingram, trading in the 1st round has never worked out from his memory. Can you think of a time where the Saints traded back into the 1st round and it worked, or had a? I mean, you can't count Marcus Davenport, because that's basically trading up in the 1st round, sacrificing a pick. can y'all think of a time where the Saints traded back into the first round and got another good pick?
When we drafted Lattimore, was that a trade up?
We didn't trade up for Lattimore, but we did trade Brandon Cooks to get the second first round pick where we got Ryan Ramczyk, and that was the first I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that was the one that came immediately to mind.
Yeah,
I knew one of the other was a result of a trade. I just couldn't remember which was which.
Yeah, we traded
if
Cooks.
you throw in pre-draft trades, you have Ramczyk, Willie Rofe in 1993. They got him in a Pat Swilling trade.
Mm-hmm.
As far as trade up, draft day trade ups or trade back into the first rounds, I think they did it in 2002 with Charles Grant at the end of the first round.
Yeah, well, we got 2 first rounds because Ricky Williams rushed for 1,800 yards. So we got 2 first rounders because we traded Ricky Williams for a first rounder. So we had Charles Grant and Dante Stallworth or Dante Stallpepper if you're Buddy D.
The only other time, if you're just looking at draft day trades, Brandon Cooks worked out pretty darn well. He touted his way out of New Orleans, but he was a very, very productive receiver for what he was asked to do. And I'd say that worked out pretty well.
Dante Stallworth, his first year, he really lit up the Saints offense. He was really good that 2003 season. The problem with Stallworth is he plateaued his rookie year and was not a hard worker. And I think that's part of the reason why he was shipped out of town and Marcus Colston beat him out in 2006. He just was not a hard worker. That's why I say it's a mixed bag because trading to get back into the first round, which the Saints rarely have done, it hasn't been great outside of Ingram. Trading up in the first round, you got a good player with Cooks. You got a disaster with Jonathan Sullivan, which is I hated that pick so much that I get mad just thinking about the Saints trading 2 first rounders to move up to a top 10. That's how much I hate that pick. Because especially I went back and looked at that draft the other day. This morning, actually. I looked back at it and the name everybody wanted was Marcus Trufant, who ended up going to Seattle. They wanted the cornerback. I wanted Kevin Williams, who ended up actually playing a season for the Saints at the end of his career, but I wanted Kevin Williams. It's frustrating because at 14, there was Troy Polamalu. And you could have had Troy Polamalu, but of course we had Tasaki Jones on the team by that point. So it's just it's that draft is full of what ifs, But when they moved up to trade to get number 6, and then Ricky Williams, people bash that trade. People bash that trade because no player is worth all your draft picks plus 2 picks the following year. But Ricky Williams was not a bad player.
Not at all.
Not at all. I think his tenure in New Orleans is vastly underappreciated.
Well, his personality is what the problem was, not his talent. It's just one of those seasons, one of those things that it just did not. He was not the kind of player that would work out, and he and Deuce McAllister did not get along. Part of the reason why Ricky ran for 1,800 yards with Miami was the fact that Ricky told the Miami brass and the coaches that he didn't care what they did that year so long as he rushed for more yards than Deuce McAllister did in 2003. So I'm like, go Ricky. I want that first round pick. Go Ricky. I was the biggest Dolphins fan in 2003. So, I mean, yeah. And of course,
Ricky had other issues as well.
yeah.
And no matter where you stand on the marijuana subject, the bottom line, it's still against the damn rules.
Well, but he had anxiety issues and was not a leader, was not comfortable being a leader. So that fueled a lot of his issues. You look at a guy like Juice McAllister, he much more fit the personality of that team, the Saints organization. He could deal with being in the spotlight. Ricky Williams really couldn't, and he used weed to help him deal with that anxiety issue. So I get it, and that's a hell of a lot.
I have absolutely no problem. That's a personal choice. If this person next to me makes that choice, go you. I don't. I don't look down at you because you do, but there again, the bottom line, it's still against the rules of your workplace.
Okay. So we're at the Smoking Man portion of our show. That means Bob's going to have to leave pretty soon after he finishes that cigarette. Yeah, and,
like packing up a lung all show long wasn't enough. Yeah,
I know. I know. Bob, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I know you got to go, so why don't you go? It's already after 10 o'clock your time. Go to sleep. Take that nicotine drag and go ahead. And I really need the X-Files music. When you start to go out there and smoke, especially when you're sitting in the dark and all I see is the tip of that cigarette glowing, it reminds me of X-Files and it reminds me of All the President's Men with Deep Throat. So
that's a good one too.
Yeah. Sitting in the parking garage, Deep Throat. So, and kiddies, you can look that up at home. Just do not.
No, don't tell them to look up Deep Throat.
Yeah.
Good God.
I said, no. You only Google it in terms of you put Deep Throat / No, given today's generation, like this is lame. This is boring. I can find better stuff on Pornhub. No, you look up Deep Throat / Watergate. Then
if it says Linda Lovelace, move on.
Yes. It's not like I told them to go to behind the green door or something, Kicking
oh my God.
School. They're like, these people are hairy. They're nasty. I don't want to see that. Anyway.
Like an industrial film covered in fur.
Here we go. We just took the turn. Damn right we did. But hey,
you're not prime time anymore.
No, we're at 10 o'clock their time. So anyway, Bob,
I tried to tap out before this happened, but I didn't get out fast enough.
No, you did not. That's what happens when you smoke in the dark. But if you see All the President's Men, you know what I'm talking about. When he meets him in the parking garage, and you never see his face. All you ever see is a cigarette glowing. And I believe that's supposed to be Alexander Haig. Swear it wasn't him. He was not him. But I believe that's who it really is for the Watergate thing. So,
yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Bob, for joining us. You take it easy, all right? Night.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Love you, bro. Love you.
Yes. In 2003, we'll jump right back into it. In 2003, Deuce did run for over 1,600 yards, but Ricky ran for 1,800 yards. So absolutely.
Well, that's my biggest fear in using a high draft pick on a wide receiver is how Michael Thomas is going to react to that.
I don't think he is. I don't think he. Look at this Watergate parking garage. I'm telling you, this computer hears me talk. Let's see. Mark Feltz. Okay. W. Mark Feltz admitted he was a former assistant FBI director, and he was the secret source that was directing Bob Woodward, who does not look like Robert Redford at all. But yeah, he was the secret source to help uncover Watergate, so the Washington Post could bring down a president. But anyway, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not putting that comment up, Avery. Anytime I see the term "two girls, one cup," we are not talking about that. No, never, never. The only way we're going to talk about that is we're going to talk about it in terms of Family Guy when Brian made Stewie watch it. That's about it.
My God.
You know, the thing about Michael Thomas is I think the ego thing and his personality and stuff, I always feel like that's the fans. Yeah, I think that's the fans that bring this up more than anything else. I think Michael Thomas will be fine.
Well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Thomas this season, considering how long it's been since he's been what would realistically be considered as an active contributor to this team.
Yeah, my issue with anytime you spend a first round pick on a receiver, it's like a first round pick on a running back. They're a knee injury away from really ending their career. Yes, offensive linemen get hurt all the time. I get that. But offensive linemen seem to battle back better from injuries than skill position guys that rely on their knees for speed, for cutting. You know, you're not dealing with that with an offensive lineman. Hell, they go out there with a damn brace on and keep playing. Offensive lineman, it's the back that usually goes out first. So if I'm going to spend a first round pick on a player and I want that 5-year deal, plus I want this guy to be able to play, 8 to 10 years, I would hope.
Yeah.
Especially that I've traded away a first round pick to get this guy. I feel really good about getting a tackle. It's just the quarterback issue.
Yeah.
Well,
I really, honestly, I truly hope that we do not spend either of those first round picks on a quarterback. I know that if we want one, that we have no choice but to. And Calvin, by the way, to an extent, I agree with you. I don't care how Michael Thomas feels about us spending a first round pick on a wide receiver, because he hasn't played in basically 2 years, and we need somebody out there to play.
No, and I think he's well aware of that. I honestly, I think he's fine with it. I think the person who had a problem with it was Brandon Cooks, because Brandon Cooks at the time saw himself as the X receiver, the number one receiver, and he wanted to go somewhere he was going to be a number one. And I think Brandon Cooks has realized now at this point of his career that he is not a number one receiver. So, that I think that's the main thing with him. So, okay, whatever. My son wants the Saints to select Desmond Ridder, the quarterback, because he wants the T-shirt idea. Ridder me this, Batman, and a picture of Desmond Ridder in a Batman outfit or a Riddler outfit. So, of course, he does. My son is a Batman fanatic. He really is. I didn't make this. I didn't make it. I read comic books. I didn't make him a Batman fan, but he is a Batman fan. So, yeah. Yeah, but Olive is bigger, isn't he? Isn't he bigger than Cooks? Because Cooks is only like 5'7", 5'11", something like that. And
I've had movements bigger than Cooks.
Oh, great! You use any form of measurement to avoid the metric, won't you? Jameson Williams, obviously, he's my choice. If I'm taking a receiver in the first round, I'm taking Jameson.
Yeah, but I think he's the first one off the board, to be honest.
I don't know, because that ACL, I think he slides a little bit. So,
well, that doesn't have the stigma that it once had, though.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, Don. I'm telling you, Matt, my son, he is a huge Batman fan. Always has been. I don't know what it is about him. There's something about his character that he's watched all the movies.
See, I'm a Joker fan.
He's watched all the cartoons, and I'll give him this. Well, he hasn't watched all of them. He hasn't watched the '70s era Batman cartoons, which actually he probably would hate. But he has watched all the DC cartoons and the ones they made to movies. I have to say the animated series when it first came out, that was really good. That was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
I always thought growing up that there would never be anyone that could play the Joker after Jack Nicholson. And then I saw Heath Ledger.
See, and I think Mark Hamill does the best Joker as far as voice.
I've heard that. I've never seen any of those cartoons, but
he's brilliant. He's brilliant. And you don't like Cesar Romero with the white makeup over the mustache, because
that was long. I liked Eartha Kitt.
No, I liked not
Lee Merriweather.
Not Lee Merriweather. No, Lee Merriweather was the movie Catwoman. Oh, come on. It'll come to me. I can picture her.
TV or movie?
TV series, 1966.
Oh my
God. Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
That was. I was just getting ready to Google it, and I had to think about. I had to think about it. So, yeah, the original Joker. Yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah, if you're a certain age, Michelle Pfeiffer did it for you too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So. Frank Gorshin will always be the best Riddler. No, really, Frank. I'm serious, Frank. And like I said, we're going off the rails again. Frank Gorshin. Frank Gorshin is always the best Riddler because he added a sense of maniacism that, if that's a word, that that sense of that maniac sense with the giggling, that just made him a great Riddler. So.
And Mickey as the Penguin.
Yes.
Oh man.
Julie Newmar, thank you. Yeah. Christian Bale was a good Batman. Yes.
Yes, I enjoyed the trilogy that he was a part of.
Because it was well written, even though you had to listen to, I'm Batman. What are you gonna do, Joker? Yeah, it got ridiculous after a while, but
Heath Ledger, to me,
he played
was the ultimate Joker. I mean, what he put into that role, it's never been equaled. Now,
he played a unique Joker. He did not play the disfigured Joker of the comics. He played basically an anarchist. Yeah. And that's what made him dangerous as opposed to all the other Jokers that you have, especially the cartoon Jokers. They're maniacs. They're mentally disturbed. So yeah, the animated Joker's laugh is unmatched because that's Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill really does a great job with him, and I just find this, subsequent Jokers all trying to imitate Mark Hamill. I did enjoy Cesar Romero's laughter as a Joker too, but it's
Mark Hamill is a great actor. Period.
He's a great voice actor. He does a great.
No, he's a great actor as well. I mean, to have started the Star Wars franchise and then bring it full circle by being in the last ones, with the same level of intensity and feeling for the role.
The thing about all these comic book characters, and I say this about movies in general. In my head, I have an idea how this character is supposed to sound, how this character is supposed to look, and so forth. So there's only two ways this can go. Either you meet or exceed my expectations, or you shock me. And you know what? I never even thought about that, but that's a good interpretation of the character. I didn't think about that at all, but that's a good interpretation. And because if it doesn't meet or exceed your expectations, then you hate it. You know, I'm having a hard time. I've had a hard time with a lot of actors who play Batman because it's like I don't see them as Batman. They, because
see that's the way that I felt about Ben Affleck.
I see Bruce Wayne and I see Batman, and the two do mix, but you've got to be able to be both characters. And
that's not to say that Ben Affleck did a bad job in the role. I never bought into it the way that I did, like Michael Keaton, Christian Bale.
Well, I'm gonna throw Marvel in here, and I know I'm starting to see people leave the chat and leave the show because we're going into comic book movie. But you take Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man, okay?
Yes.
I would have never pictured Robert Downey Jr. because to me, Robert Downey Jr. is the character from Back to School, who's the roommate, smart ass, rapid fire guy. Well, that's not Tony Stark in my head. Tony Stark is, I don't know. I used to think the guy who could play Tony Stark best was the character from Sleeping with the Enemy. I almost said Eric Bieniemy. Sleeping with the Enemy, who slapped the crap out of Julia Roberts. I'm like, yeah, but he would make a badass Tony Stark because he looks like Tony Stark. But Robert Downey Jr. came in with his smart ass self, and I'm like, you know what? I never thought about that, but I actually enjoy the fact that he is Tony Stark because, he did. You're a smart.
He did a great job in that role.
So that's why. That's a good example of somebody who I didn't expect to play the role and actually did a very good job. James Bond. Sean Connery has permanently shaped my idea of who James Bond is. And I know people who grew up with Roger Moore and they like the Roger Moore's, the campiness and the silliness of those eras too. But as a result, I am always judging all these other characters, all these other actors who've played James Bond to Sean Connery. So when you pick Daniel Craig, I'm like, well, first off, he's blonde, so that's wrong. And I just can't see this guy playing James Bond. Then I see Casino Royale, and I'm like, holy shit, this is my second favorite Bond. I
liked Pierce Brosnan actually.
See, Pierce Brosnan had to look, but I thought Pierce Brosnan looked bored as James Bond, and I thought his movies were terrible. I like GoldenEye, but his subsequent movies I thought were all terrible. It got to be, I don't know, it was like Roger Moore Bonds without all the fun. I mean,
yeah.
So he frustrated me. I couldn't. I have not watched those films. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds was born to play Deadpool. Yes, he was.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was.
There can never be another Deadpool. Just like there can never be another Harley Quinn.
So that's all I'm saying, and this is true for all the movies. If you read books, you watch the movies and stuff like that, you start seeing these characters and you start going, okay, these are this is who I would think would make a great actor for this film. And we talk, I'm in groups like that where we talk about these things. So, bringing this back to the Saints. So I've never watched Home Team because I like Kevin James, but you put Kevin James in a movie and I'm like, okay, it's going to be King of Queens. It's going to be Mall Cop. It's going to be something like that. Yeah. That's not what I want to see. So I start thinking about who could play Sean Payton in a movie, who could play Drew Brees in a movie, those kind of things. Yeah. So, it's, you start thinking about that kind of stuff. So, that's why it's hard for me to get into that movie. Cause the whole time I'm like going, he's not Sean Payton. This is a King of Queens. This is a Mall Cop. This is, every Kevin James movie that's ever come out, kind of movie.
The only movies that I saw him in that I thought were really good were the ones with Adam Sandler.
Well, he's an Adam Sandler fan. Yeah, he's an Adam Sandler fan. So, Roger Moore is the James Bond and Adam West is the Batman. I liked them, but they weren't the actual spirit of the character. Yeah, they were, except, the only problem with Adam West, I have come to a different conclusion. Adam West is Batman. Look at this question here. Not this one, the next one. I'm getting ready to flash up here. I have grown to appreciate the 1966 Batman that I did not appreciate when I was a kid in the 70s. I used to get mad watching it because it got to be so ridiculous. The bat copter and the bat shark repellent and all that stuff. It bat everything, but some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. But but the thing about those Batman things I started to appreciate were I appreciated Wayne Manor. I love the Batmobile. I appreciated the things they did take from the comics, and they were trying to make it family oriented, but they took a very comic book approach to it. When the villain showed up, the camera angle was always tilted, like it would be in a comic book page, that kind of stuff. So
there can only ever all respect to Gal Gadot, but there can only be one Wonder Woman ever, and that's Linda Carter.
I like the actress who played Wonder Woman, Gal
Gadot.
Gal Gadot, thank you. But you're right. All those Wonder Woman shows are very hard to sit and watch. And sometimes I'm like, I watched one of them the other day because it's on Amazon. I watched one the other day and I'm like, yeah, this scene was for keep the dads interested in the show. It was Linda Carter and a female villain, and they proceeded to roll down a hill wrestling. As they're rolling this way down the hill, I'm like watching this going, yeah, this is for the dads to watch this.
Yeah, I liked anytime Wonder Woman would run.
Yeah, so did all the dads. Who would play Alan and Sean in a made-for-TV movie? Some poor bastard. I tell you what.
Oh, my God. I would probably be somebody like David Spade, man.
I would have to be a skinny version of let me think. What is that guy's name? Tommy Boy. Come on.
Chris Farley.
Chris Farley. That'd be a skinny Chris Farley, because that would probably be. I could see Chris Farley playing me. Steve Martin, colors his hair a little bit. He could play me. So there we go.
I have no clue who would be me.
Alan.
That's another me is just too scary to contemplate.
Absolutely. Gail, good Lord. Yeah.
Gal, G-A-L.
Yeah.
G-A-D-O-T.
Yes.
Gal Gadot.
Yes.
And in the what was the movie that they did with Superman, Wonder Woman?
That was Justice League.
In Justice League.
Yeah.
Every time she has an independent shot in the film, the camera is conveniently located down low, so it's kind of an upskirt shot.
Okay. I have not seen Justice League. I have not watched the 4-hour cut version, the director's cut version of it either. The Flash, the kid that played the Flash, made the movie. See, and it's just so hard for me because, this is how we started the conversation. My mind, I have different people playing these roles, and I have different members of the Justice League involved in it too. So it's hard for me to kind of get my head in that space where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to see.
To me, I really liked it. Like I said, I never quite completely bought into Ben Affleck as Batman. But the way that it was written was really good. And the kid, I don't even know the kid's name that played the Flash, but his comedic timing in that movie was incredible.
Yeah. And you see, I guess that's why I just have to I have to get in that mindset. I mean, I'm like that about some movies, but anyway. Yes, I did hear that she was pregnant filming while she was filming that Wonder Woman movie, Wonder Woman 1984. Will Smith would play you. Are you going to slap somebody, Calvin? All right. We went way over time because, of course, we started talking about movies, and I didn't even touch.
And you know what? This is the first episode that I can remember in a long time that we didn't mention that person who shall remain nameless.
I'm glad we didn't because I'm tired of talking about him anyway. You know, okay, so next week, of course, we'll see what other news is going to happen with the Saints because so far, just before every show, I'm thinking I'm racking my brains, going, "What are we going to talk about this week?" And suddenly the Saints do something.
Yeah.
So there's the news story. We'll talk more about the draft. We're going to talk about the other needs, the other rounds too. Because we spent a lot of time talking about the quarterbacks tonight. We'll talk more about the receivers. I want to talk about tight ends. I want to talk about running backs too, because we have not really addressed the Alvin Kamara thing, and I don't think he's going to get off scot-free like what's his name did, Marcus Lattimore did. I think there will be some kind of punishment. It's just a question of how much. So that is a need, and that is a very real need. So we're going to have to look at the running backs and see what we can do because it may be a combination of things. It may be a guy we bring in the draft, maybe a guy they're going to bring in as a free agent too, because they're going to anticipate 6 to 8 games, and that's out of a 17-game season. 6 to 8 games is still half the season. And you're talking about Jameis Winston. If they only draft one receiver, really having to throw the ball a lot more than he want to, you're going to need a running back who can catch passes at the backfield because regardless if Peyton's here or not, you still have those basic concepts of a short passing game. So those are all things that we have to look at. So,
and I think it's probably one of the, as you called it before, the elephants in the room. This is not going to be a Sean Payton team. This is going to be a Dennis Allen team. Now, what does that entail? Does that change our offense? Does that change our defense? Those are all questions that I'm anxious to find out the answer to.
Right. So we'll talk about that next time. I know Bob's been burning the candles at both ends. He's got stories coming out seemingly every day about the Saints because there seems to be, even though there's not much activity, there's a lot of news involving the Saints. And I promise you they're not finished making their moves before draft. So in the meantime, we'll see what happens. And we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us for this hour and 45 minutes. My God.